No. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good.
Sorry, I'm not sure why it started the stream. I didn't tell it to you. I just got it ready so I could wait until
You take what
stuff
the
started.
enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Turn it for good.
Alright guys, I'm just gonna get away so I can talk a little bit, let you guys know what's happening. So bye. So we are here good. We're here in Clarke County, Washington, Vancouver, Washington. Thanks, Manny. Second Amendment. We're here as members of People's Rights. Kelly Stewart, who runs People's Rights in Washington, doesn't run it. She's kind of the organizer, I guess. It's decentralized, so no one really runs it. She's kind of the head person, I guess. Her and some other people from People's Rights have probable cause warrants from back at the end of January. I don't know if you guys saw my video when they went to the hospital here in Salmon Creek. Satin, this woman right here. Her mom was being held in the hospital. She refused to do a COVID test, so they held her for 24 hours and they wouldn't let Satin in to see her. They wouldn't let Satin in to see her. So People's Rights responded to try to get the hospital to either release the mother or let Satin in. And so now, several weeks, I guess almost a month and a half later, we've got some probable cause warrants that have been issued for 4 people. A man and his son, and then Satin and Kelly Stewart. So we're here today because they want to say some words about it in hopes that the judge will not find probable cause and actually issue these warrants. But I think that's probably going to happen.
To the truth. Right now.
Salmon Creek Hospital released the mom into the care of people with legal power of attorney and her daughter.
Okay.
Person, yeah. So that's it. So now the Clarke County Sheriff has signed warrants for all their arrests.
That is sad, Tom.
I don't know if you watched those 2-hour videos.
I watched the one with the Salmon Creek where they were in
That's
the
it.
hospital.
Yeah. So now we're on this charge. So we're here to call it bluff and see what
Okay. Eagle today?
What's that?
No Eagle?
No Eagles, Dave. He is in the car. I could put him on. Glad you appreciate it. Sometimes I'm not sure.
They keep sending sheriffs. I see people walking around.
Yeah, it's not like I was here at like 2, and they had more then.
Yeah. I think they built it's not anything because they break windows. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, hoping that something happens.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry. I said hi earlier.
Jesse, yeah.
Corey.
Yeah, the Corey Man X thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now I watch some of your videos and stuff.
Right on. Cool.
Hey, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? I'm Adam. I'm Jesse.
So I think after they sing a couple of songs here, I think the woman who was in the hospital is going to speak. Satin and I think Kelly are going to speak. So that's the main reason I went live. I didn't realize they were going to be singing for as long. But we'll listen to this song here and then we'll listen to what they have to say. How are you guys doing today? How's the tyranny in your neck of the woods? Strong?
You recognize the word? All I did was worship.
So we've got some people here. Like I said, we have Kelly Stewart is in here. She's over there, right there. Joey Gibson is here from this area. And I just talked to him a bit ago. I'm not sure exactly where he's at. Somewhere around. Anyways. I don't know about a color of the power. I'm tired of the power treating us bad. I would agree with that, Sandy. You're right about that, Robert Allen. Walk around the corner here. So I've been here. I left really early this morning and got here a little bit before noon. I've been walking around the courthouse since like 10. I don't know, since like probably a little bit before 2 o'clock. What's up, Rockman? So there really hasn't been anybody here until the last hour. But my kids and I have been cruising around. It's funny because there was a heavier police presence up before everybody started showing. Some people got threatened with arrest for using speech. So we're protesting. Nice. Okay, you're in the right place. You don't want to talk much. That's right, Rockman out. So I just thought while she's singing, maybe I'll walk around the courthouse a little bit. Give you guys a little view of what's here. Do a little First Amendment audit while I'm at it. See if I can find a piggy to follow around. So, like I said, this is the Clarke County Courthouse. It does sound to me, I did speak with Kelly a little bit. Hey, resist the cabal. It does sound like they are probably going to issue a warrant for their arrest. It won't happen today, but she did tell me they are doing all their homework, making sure all their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed. So it does sound like they're probably going to issue warrants, which isn't surprising. Anybody who has much experience with it knows usually the police tell them, they're like, I've had attorneys tell me, that pretty much anything works as probable cause. The bar for probable cause is extremely low. So resist the cabal. We're in Clarke County, Washington, and Vancouver, which is just across the Columbia River from Portland, just north of Portland. We're here because some members of People's Rights were just standing up for a patient at a hospital and her daughter who was being refused entry to go advocate for her mother. So they had People's Rights show up to protest that. And in the process, since then, they have been, the Clarke County Sheriff's Department has worked with the hospital to come up with probable cause warrants for their arrest for, I can't remember the exact RCW number or the name, but it's basically disturbing a medical facility, causing a disturbance at a medical facility. They're saying like their noise was disturbing the hospital. They did shut the hospital. They didn't have to, they just did it. And then they also charged them with trespassing, but I really don't think either of them are going to stick because they didn't follow the procedure for the trespass, so that one shouldn't stick. I'm still singing here. So they didn't follow the trespass correctly, so that one probably won't stick because in order to be trespassed from a public accommodation in the state of Washington, you have to be breaking a law. They can't just, if you're a public accommodation in the state of Washington, they can't just trespass you because. Yeah, resist the cabal. I wish people would do it a lot of different places, man. So yeah, it is good. It's nice to see it in the state of Washington this happen. We can't get this in Spokane. Of course, we don't really have, I don't like our sheriff there, but he isn't doing what the sheriff here is doing either, so we haven't really had to. We've had reason to. Not as many people have stayed up as I would like. But,
Jesus is greater.
I think they're going to start doing some talking, so I'll probably get up there. I've got my other camera right in front of there.
No weapon formed against us shall prosper in the name of Jesus. When the enemy comes in like a flood, what does Jesus do? Lifts up a standard against him. That's what we're doing today. We're declaring and we're lifting up a standard against the enemy. He's already been defeated. Amen? All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming out. And we're going to get on with this.
Thanks, man. Doing all right, dude?
Tired.
Yeah, we walked down to the waterfront from here earlier.
We have Estera coming up, and she will be speaking and sharing, or sharing.
Really resist? I'll have to check that. I was unaware of that. Someone in Yakima, huh? I'll have to check that out. That's good information to know. Thanks. And thanks for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, hit that like button, y'all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Estera, and I want to tell you all
Can you guys hear her okay?
what I've been witnessing and what I witnessed at the hospital is some scary times we are living in. Our current situation is getting scarier by the day. It is very alarming and very scary and dangerous to a free country. It reminds me of the horrible stories my family told me about growing up. In Ukraine, when I was born, my mom was more scared to give birth in the hospital, in the local hospital, than she was giving birth to me the first time because of the horrible stories that she heard that they did to the patients in the hospitals. Because again,
all right, thanks guys.
Back then in the hospital, nobody was allowed in. There were no advocates. There were no family members allowed. And when I was born, my mom was in the room with a lot of women for days. She said 8 to 10 days they were in the hospital, and the babies were not allowed to be with them. The nurses would take the babies and only bring them back for feedings. The moms would cry, please, leave the babies here with us. Why are you taking them? No, be quiet. It's not allowed. Yeah, it was very sad. My mom said that way too many women had their babies kidnapped by the hospitals. The nurses would come back and say, sorry, your baby died. You couldn't do anything about it. My mom was so scared not to lose me that secretly she brought a nude color string and tied it around my arm and hid it in between my rolls. So every time they would bring back the baby for feedings, my mom would cry, hoping when she opened up the swaddle that the string would still be there and I was still her baby, because of the business that was going on and the corruption that was going on in between the hospitals. They would sell these babies and tell the moms that they died, and you couldn't do anything about it. And on top of that, if you were a Christian, the treatment you got was horrible. They would tell you, oh, shut up, you Christian, pray to your God. Be quiet. When they would say, please, I'm in pain, give me something. Or ouch, that hurts. Oh, be quiet, pray to your God. Don't tell us what to do. And it was just, they would tell them, you fat cows, stop having babies. You rabbits, stop having babies. When are you guys gonna learn your lesson? These women, especially the Christian women, were terrified to have babies in the local hospitals. If you wanted decent care, you had to bribe. You had to pay the doctor under the table or the nurses to get a decent care and know that maybe they would treat you fairly. At one moment, my mom thought she had a chance to show my dad me out the window because the husbands weren't allowed inside. Nobody was allowed to see what was happening behind those doors. So my dad waited all day just to see my mom and maybe a glimpse of me. And my mom thought she had a good chance and she showed me. And one of the nurses caught her and my mom almost got a beat down by the nurses. She said it was so horrible she couldn't wait to get out. And thank God, by the grace of God, she did finally get out. But she said those were the kind of stories you heard that you didn't want to end up in the hospital for. My family lived to become witnesses against communism and dictatorship. There is so many similarities between what's going on today. People have been kept away from their family members in the name of COVID. But nurses can come and go day in and day out, and nobody says anything, and it's okay. But not for the families. They are not allowed because no one is held accountable. Just think about it. Anything can happen behind those closed doors because no family or advocate is allowed to keep those nurses and doctors accountable. All this inhumane treatments is pure communism. Wake up, America. Wake up, my fellow Americans. This is a communist takeover. And pure communism censorship, where when we use peaceful means to resolve, our abuse or overreach, we are told it's not allowed. COVID has been used to make prisoners of all of us, from the patients to the inmates to the elderly and to the families on the outside. We are going to do what is right, and we are going to speak truth and righteousness. We will spread the light over all the darkness and corruptions. And with that being said, thank you very much to each and every one of you who came here today to stand with us and with Satin and her mom. Thank you, and God bless you. And here comes Satin.
All right, so Satin, this is the daughter of the mother who was in the hospital. Yeah, I got what you were saying.
Hello, everyone. Am I in the
Shit, putting on a show. That's how you get people's attention, dude.
My name is Satin Meyer, and I'm Gail Meyer's daughter. I would like to thank you all for coming today. I would also like to thank our friends that came to support my mother and I when her wishes to have her daughter present were not being granted that night at the hospital. I would like to know what my intentions were at the hospital on January 29th. My obligation was to uphold my mother's wishes and care for her well-being and to make sure she was safe, as I am also her full-time caregiver. Even after I made multiple calls to the police when I first arrived and was told I was not allowed to be with my mother, they came only when the hospital called.
Right about
After
that,
watching
Jeremy.
several other visitors walk through the doors of the emergency room to visit their loved ones, I attempted to follow them into the building where I was then assaulted by the police. This was not a mask issue that the hospital police are claiming. It's truly a police cover-up for their poor choices to not stand with the people they have taken an oath to defend. It was shocking when the police did not come to stand with us, the people, but instead chose to stand in front of us as personal security guards for the hospital. Now to learn that the Clarke County Sheriff's Department think I belong in jail for 2 years for doing the right thing shocks me. Legacy Salmon Creek Hospital gave me mixed messages about my mother's care and left me in fear for her safety, and yet in the end they are claiming to be the victims in this matter. We will continue to stand for truth and justice and not be bullied into silence, and I thank you all for coming today and standing with us, and God bless you.
So this is Satin's mom. She was the one that was put in a 24-hour quarantine at Salmon Creek Legacy here in Salmon Creek.
Need some water.
So trying to get her mom ready to talk. That's what the delay is for.
My
y'all.
name is Gail Meyer. I wanted to say thank you to those who came to Legacy Hospital to help me get home to my daughter and granddaughter on 1/29/21.
Right about that.
I do
Resist.
not remember very much about what happened, but I do remember wanting to be with my daughter while I was in the hospital. I love each and every one of you, and I'm pleased that you came to help me get me home. Clarke County Sheriff's Department, please leave my daughter and her friends alone. They don't deserve this. They are innocent of any wrongdoing. They only came to help
Hey,
me.
Vic, hey, hook up with
Thank
me, man.
you, and
You guys should go
God
out.
bless
Help each other out.
you all.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. I'm gonna come out here a little bit. I don't mince words. I didn't write this part, but I'm just gonna call it like I see it. This is political targeting. This has nothing to do with Satin Meyer or Patrick Morris or Justin. Clarke County Sheriff's Department, your beef is with me and you know it. And I'm calling on the prosecutor, if you choose to bring charges, to leave the three of them out of it. I've been standing for political prisoners for 5 years, and I know the extreme risk that is present in America when you exercise your First Amendment rights and you expose corruption. But the three of these individuals did not quite know what they were getting into when they started speaking out. And I beg of you to fight this battle with me. And I'll fight it in the courts, and I won't back down. But leave these individuals alone. And leave Justin Morris alone. He did nothing wrong that night. He had no idea what he was getting into when he went to stand for his neighbor and defend the innocent. So I plead with the judge, when the charges are come before him today or later in the week, to please leave these other three alone and deal with me. Let's also be honest, this has very little to do with anything in Clarke County. And it's a political smear campaign to poison the jury pool, and it has mostly to do with me and with Ammon Bundy, and with those that this government is trying to demonize that they're afraid of because we stand up and we speak the truth. So let's just call this what it is. Families should not be separated by hospitals. Amen?
Amen.
I've learned the road to justice for liberty and all is justice and liberty for all is narrow, and few are willing to blaze its rocky and uncertain trail. My name is Kelly Stewart. I don't hide my face. I don't operate in the darkness, and I believe sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I don't believe we did anything wrong on January 29th.
You didn't.
I'm a lifelong resident of Clarke County, a wife of 21 years, married to a man who's also a lifelong resident of Clarke County, and I'm not fleeing my home. founder of People's Rights Washington, and I'm not afraid to associate with that name.
All right, good job, dude.
I'm the co-founder of Neighbors United and the Underground Church. And I'm thankful for each and every one of you who are here today to stand with us. And at the end of this, we will go and turn ourselves in and see if warrants have been issued. America is currently hemorrhaging from billions of tiny paper cuts. And we have to identify the perpetrator if we are to stop the bleed. And I believe that the biggest enemy to the human race right now worldwide is fear.
Across the river.
Fear is a spirit, the Bible tells us. God did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and of sound mind. I'll remind you, when Jesus entered the temple, he found his father's house had been turned into a den of thieves. He drove out the money changers with whips, and he overturned tables, and he shamed those who violated their position and place of power. And I think if you walk the earth today, he might say that our hospitals used to be a place of healing for the sick, but it become, many of them, a den of thieves. However, we will leave the whips and overturning of tables to him. Amen. I continue to hear groups and factions talk about the need for violence. They say the best way to guarantee you'll be heard by your government is to destroy buildings and damage private property. They say threats of force is how we need to get what we want, and I disagree.
Right?
If you have to use threats and force to get what you want, you have already become the very giant you were fighting.
Yes.
Last May, I watched a video of Heidi St. John in May talk about her mother who had had a heart attack, went to the hospital, and then suffered from an infection and went back. And she sat in the car and grieved as they told her she couldn't go and be with her mom. She lived with her and she was her caregiver. She said she waited 2 days with no updates from the hospital, no medical updates, no understanding of what medication she'd been given, no understanding of how she was.
Thanks for joining us, Rich.
I watched her video and I thought to myself, I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there and do nothing. Well, the sick cry out for their advocates and are handed over to complete strangers with no representation from their family. I watched her video and I said out loud, not on my watch. Wasn't long until I started hearing about the nightmares of
Gonna
loved
give y'all a
ones being
heads
left
up.
unattended
Facebook
in
can't press.
hospitals and
I only got
nursing
like
homes
5%
receiving
battery left,
inadequate
so
care,
this is about to
feeling
shut down.
isolated and afraid.
So if it shuts down, that's
I
why.
once
I
again
got my
remember
other
the old
cameras on,
saying,
so we got
you
it.
can tell a lot by a nation by how it treats its most vulnerable. The unborn, the sick, the elderly, and the imprisoned. January 29th, Satin called me in tears saying her mom was being quarantined at Legacy Salmon Creek, and they would not let Satin in to be with her. Despite her entering that day with a mask on, despite her being the power of attorney, despite her being the full-time caregiver, they stated due to COVID policy, she now could not see her for 24 hours, even though she had been with her the night before until 4 o'clock in
We'll
the
do
morning at the
resist. You
hospital.
know that, brother.
She was only there for a UTI and fluids. It was their choice that they admitted her. She had no signs of illness or COVID whatsoever. The hospital agreed the night before not to COVID test her and not to try to vaccinate her. Satin begged the nurses for help. They explained her mother had traumatic brain injury from brain tumors. She has multiple seizures a day and she could not be quarantined for 24 hours without Satin being there to look after her. She was not only
It's pretty
denied
ironic.
access and
These
given
people over here think they're
many
men,
mixed
and they're gonna
concerning
fight. I
bits
don't
of
know why.
information about what they had done and
These
not
are the
done to
real
her, but she
strong
later
people
called
just
back to
standing,
talk to the staff while it
talking,
was being recorded.
trying to be
Legacy,
free.
this is all on recording and we're not afraid of the truth. She was not only denied being able to discharge her mom, but they hung up on her numerous times. To say she was in fear for her mother's safety was an understatement. So what did she do? She called the sheriff for help.
She didn't get it.
Then her friends called the sheriff for help. I called 2 times and they told me personally, we're not responding to your calls today, Kelly. I asked for a civil standby and a deputy to come and stand with us because I was concerned that what the hospital was doing was illegal.
Yeah,
and they
Colorado's
refused to
last hope,
respond.
Vancouver.
So tell me, what are
Front of the
people to do?
courthouse.
What are people to do? We want peaceful means,
They're
but
gonna-
what are people to do?
They're done talking.
When
They're
we're
gonna turn
exhausting every
themselves
peaceful
in, see
means
if
and we're not
warrants
being
have been
heard.
issued. I don't think they have yet.
Friends and family showed up to exercise their First Amendment right, but most of all, our God-given obligation to love our neighbor as ourselves.
Right.
Do unto others as you would have them do to you. To be a voice for the voiceless. To stand in the gap for the weak and the unheard. Policy should never trump moral obligation to do what is right. So tell me, if you were a patient left in that situation, what would you want your daughter to do?
I'll tell you.
If I'm not in here. Many of us came together that night to do our part to make sure a peaceful resolution was obtained. It was a very avoidable situation, and it was created by the hospital and then enabled by our Clarke County Sheriff's Department,
Absolutely.
which was incredibly disappointing. The entire situation would have never occurred had the hospital honored their commitment to Satin when she had arrived and dropped her mom off, which was that she could come back and visit as long as she was the same visitor the whole time her mom was there. The sheriff could have avoided the situation by escorting Satin in to see her mom.
Right,
Surely
I
if they
like
could
Max. I
enter
watch
with a
Peggy
mask
every once in a while. I
on
try to watch
and it was
Max
safe,
regularly.
then so could her daughter.
Appreciate that.
Instead, we were demonized by the media. They said we all had gas masks and we were armed. I didn't see a gun. And come on, does anybody in our group own a gas mask?
I brought one today!
Imagine wearing it when they faced us if we owned a gas mask, you guys. Come on. The media lied, but the narrative was actually put out by the Clarke County Sheriff's Department. And now criminal charges have been sought against us. Our only goal and concern was Gail having safe access to her daughter to be cared for while she was in the hospital. Thankfully, the hospital did eventually do what was right and discharge her. To think that we would ever tolerate handing our sick or injured and elderly over to complete strangers and walk away trusting that their care will be sufficient is absurd.
I brought it to a few of them.
Humans are
There's a
fallible.
couple I haven't really felt
Humans
I
get
needed that.
impatient. Humans who are paid money to care for our loved ones are
It's old
wholly
school, like from
inadequate to be the
Vietnam or
sole
something. I got it at a
advocate
garage
for our
sale.
sick,
Somebody was selling it.
especially when a loved one is capable of being present. Never should we be told a nurse or a police officer can wear a mask and be safe with a patient, but the family and loved ones cannot.
Yep.
Do what is right and let the consequences follow. If
Yes.
we are to be prosecuted and they attempt to make us spend time in jail for defending the weak and exposing medical kidnap, so be it. If the judge signs the warrants this week and the Clarke County prosecutor brings the charges, the truth of that night